The stars were out, the lake was calm, and I was sitting by the fire pit behind my cabin, slowly turning a marshmallow over the flames. My dog, Bandit, lay stretched beside me, snoring softly. It was the kind of peaceful night I worked hard for, the kind you only get when you own land, water, and your freedom. But HOA Karen had other plans. Now let me back up. I live on a 12-acre lakeside property I inherited from my uncle, complete with a natural spring, a cabin, and private shoreline access. It's outside city limits but just close enough to a housing development where the HOA thinks they rule the whole zip code. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of that HO, had been gunning for me ever since I refused to register my property with them. Which, by the way, they have zero authority to demand. The tension had been simmering for months, complaints about my unauthorized dock, my dog barking too freely, and the most ridiculous one, illegal sunset gatherings, whatever that means. But nothing beat the night she called the cops on me for roasting marshmallows. I was minding my own business, fire low, no music, no guests. Just me and Bandit enjoying a simple evening snack by the lake. Suddenly, headlights hit the trees behind me, followed by the unmistakable crunch of tires on gravel. Two sheriff's deputies stepped out, shining their flashlights in my direction. "You the homeowner?" one asked. "Sure am," I said, raising an eyebrow. "Something wrong?" "We got a call from a neighbor in the HOA saying there's an open flame and smoke. Possible fire hazard." I almost laughed. "You mean the campfire? An illegal stone pit? 20 feet from the tree line and right next to a water source." They looked around. The fire was barely more than glowing coals. Bandit didn't even lift his head. The younger deputy nodded. "This looks fine to me. Sorry to bother you." HOA folks can be enthusiastic. Before they left, I asked, "Was it Karen?" He smirked. "Didn't say, but it was definitely Karen." After they pulled out, I stared across the lake toward the development on the other side. Karen's two-story eyesore sat right at the edge, with floodlights that lit up the lake like a prison yard. She must have been watching me through binoculars like a hawk with a grudge. That's when I remembered something. See, the spring that fed my lake also ran beneath my land, and I owned the water rights. Not just to my shore, but to the underground supply line that runs straight to the HOA's irrigation pump system. The same one they used to water Karen's prize roses. She wanted a war over marshmallows? She was about to find out what it means when you mess with the man who controls the water. The next morning, while Karen was probably bragging on her neighborhood app about dealing with a fire hazard, I was already 3 steps ahead. I walked down to the utility shed near the creek inlet, a modest little structure tucked behind some scrub oak, and opened the hatch to the old water control valve system my uncle had installed decades ago. It was still in perfect shape. See, most folks didn't know that while the lake looked like just another rural watering hole, it was actually fed by an underground spring that ran beneath my land, and my land only. Years ago, when the nearby development went up, my uncle had been generous enough to sign a shared use agreement with the HOA to let them tap the spring for landscaping purposes, for free, under the condition it wouldn't be abused or rerouted. Karen, of course, had never read that agreement. And I had never formally renewed it. So I did the simplest thing a man in my position could do. I turned the valve. With a satisfying metal groan, the line that fed the HOA's sprinkler system and Karen's yard was now bone dry. By noon, I was sitting on the porch with Bandit, sipping sweet tea when the call started. First, the HOA vice president, a younger guy named Mike. "Hey Amar, our irrigation system's offline. Any idea what's going on?" "Yeah," I replied. "I shut it off." "You shut it off?" he repeated, stunned. "I control the spring," I said casually. "It runs through my land and there's no active agreement in place." "Not anymore." There was a long pause. "You can't just cut off water to 30 homes." "Oh, I can," I said, and I did. "Maybe next time don't call the cops over marshmallows." He hung up in a panic. By 3 p.m., Karen was stomping across my gravel drive in sandals and rage. She didn't even knock, just started yelling. "You had no right. That water is for community use." "Wrong," I said, standing calmly in the doorway. "That water was shared under a goodwill agreement which expired 2 years ago. Legally it's mine. Morally, maybe don't weaponize 911 over a man enjoying a s'more." She screamed something about lawsuits and stormed off. I smiled and waved. That night, sprinkler heads sputtered and hissed across the neighborhood. Grass began to yellow. Karen's prized rose garden drooped. I saw her dragging buckets of water from her bathtub by flashlight. I hadn't even done anything illegal. I'd simply reclaimed what was mine, and made a very public point. She wanted control? She picked the wrong battleground. Because when you mess with a man who owns the lake and the water under your feet, you'd better pack more than a marshmallow stick. You said. The next 3 days were pure chaos, but not for me. Karen's HOA kingdom was in full drought mode. Lawns crisped, fountains sputtered, and her precious rose bushes? They turned to wilted brown stalks that looked like they'd been through a desert war zone. I kept hearing lawnmowers idle around the neighborhood, but no one dared use them. Nothing left to mow. People started talking, and not just the quiet kind. By the time day 4 hit, I got a knock at my door. It wasn't Karen. It was Mike, the HOA VP again, this time with his hat literally in his hands. Amar, he said carefully, we'd like to formally request a meeting. We didn't realize the water rights weren't permanent. I leaned against the porch railing. You didn't ask. You assumed. He nodded. Karen said she had it handled. Karen called the cops on me for roasting marshmallows, I said flatly. And now you're asking me for water? Fair point, he muttered. Still, I didn't want to punish the entire neighborhood forever, just Karen. So I made a plan. A legal, public, and poetic plan. That weekend, I posted a notice on my front gate and mailed copies to every HOA resident, to whom it may concern. Effective immediately, I will be offering tiered water access agreements to properties in the HOA subdivision. All residents are welcome to apply, provided they agree to a new set of community respect clauses. However, any individual who has harassed, falsely reported, or attempted to assert HOA jurisdiction on non-HOA land will be permanently denied access. I signed it, had it notarized, and posted a copy online. The best part? I included a legal addendum stating that any attempt to retaliate would result in permanent loss of water access and possible trespassing charges. Karen was now officially banned from the only water supply her property depended on. What followed was even better. Neighbors started turning on her. I got thank you notes, home-baked cookies, and one guy even offered to help me install a new pipeline. Karen, meanwhile, became a pariah in her own cul-de-sac. Every morning, I watched from my porch as she wrestled with a garden hose hooked up to her kitchen sink, dragging it across dry grass. Once, I even saw her trying to fill her koi pond using bottled water. Bottled water. Bandit just lay beside me, tail wagging slow and satisfied, like he knew exactly what was happening. I didn't gloat. Okay, maybe a little. But I kept it neighborly. Because the point wasn't just revenge. It was respect. Something Karen had never offered but was now learning the hard way. You said. A week later, Karen cracked. It didn't happen during some big showdown or fiery confrontation. It happened early one morning when she walked across the street holding a white envelope and looking like someone who hadn't slept in days. Her lawn was dead, her flower beds barren, and her porch had a faint mildew smell from trying to wash things down with leftover dishwater. She stepped cautiously onto my property, this time without a clipboard, without barking demands, and without calling 911. I came to apologize, she said, eyes down. I didn't say anything at first. Just let her stand there in the silence, shifting nervously. Bandit, loyal as ever, sat at my feet, watching her like a seasoned deputy. I was wrong, she continued. I overstepped. I let the power of the HOA go to my head. And I treated you like some outsider when this is your land, your lake. Still, I said nothing. I know you don't owe me anything, she added. But if there's any way I can earn back access. I raised a hand. You called the cops on me for roasting marshmallows. She winced. I know. I was petty. Controlling. I thought keeping the HOA tight made me important. I didn't realize how much damage I was doing. I studied her face. The usual fire in her eyes was gone, replaced by someone humbled, desperate even. The envelope trembled in her hands. She extended it. A formal resignation. I'm stepping down from the HOA board. Permanently. Now they got my attention. You're serious? I am. I took the envelope. Inside, a signed resignation letter, along with a handwritten apology. Not typed. Not lawyer approved. Real. Human. For a second, I considered granting her access again. Just out of decency. But then I remembered every petty note, every fine, every smirk from behind those HOA sunglasses. I accept your apology, I said. But the water access stays off. She nodded, almost relieved. Fair. She walked away with her shoulders a little straighter, lighter maybe. And honestly, that was enough for me. The next HOA election brought in new leadership. People who actually listened, who stopped pretending their bylaws were state law. The neighborhood changed. People waved more, argued less. Some even started coming down to the lake for cookouts, with marshmallows this time. I installed a public bench near the shore and carved a little sign above it. In case of emergency, just talk to your neighbor. Bandit liked to nap under it in the evenings. And me? I finally got to roast my marshmallows in peace. No sirens. No fonts. Just quiet, firelight and the sound of Karen's sprinklers, still silent. You said,